Okay, so you can start your band built project in a number of different ways, and it will really depend on what your project is. But I'm going to make a very large vessel, and I do it one of two ways. I either start with a flat base, or I start with a molded base, and in either case I use a slab to begin. So I've rolled out a slab on my slab roller, and it's not super thick, but I definitely want, I was thinking of making it a little bit thicker than I did. But I think it'll be all right. It's similar to the base that I began a few minutes ago. So I want about even thickness. So I'm going to begin with just using one of these bats to make a round shape. And you can use any round shape you find around the studio to just trace if you like. And then you can put it down on a wooden bat, and let me grab my bat here. You can begin to build with the coils on top of that. So I'm going to carefully take this clay away, and then I'll re-wedge this clay to make some more coils in a little bit. So I want to save the rest of my slab here so that I can make some bands. Now I started with about 12.5 pounds of clay, which was a lot of clay. It would be a couple of your pugs probably. It was a piece of clay about this big. So if you're going to make a smaller form, you may just want a small base, and you can make it any shape you like. If you're going to make a shape that's not round, you may want to think about using coils as opposed to strips or bands like we're going to cut out of this here, because the coils are really flexible. They can bend around different shapes, and they can make change in volume very easily. All right, so I will show you in another video how I will build up on this, but I'm going to set this aside and let it stiffen for a little bit. Now, if I wanted to have a rounded base, which I will often do for some of my larger pieces, I will just put it over a mold. And I use these simple metal IKEA bowls as molds, but I have to be careful that I don't put the wet clay directly on the metal because it'll stick, right? So we have plaster molds in the studio, and those would work well. But you would put it on the mold, let it stiffen until you could take it off and it would hold its shape, and then remove it from the mold. Can't dry on the mold or it will crack because the mold will impede its drying. So if I'm going to use something that's not porous, then I'll put some cornstarch on the clay before I stretch it on there. We do have some cornstarch in the studio. So if you have a shape from home that you want to bring in, or if you're working at home, you can do that. So now I've got some nice pieces of clay here, and I'm going to cut some strips like I've done back here, and I'm going to just stack them up. I'm going to show you a little closer here. I'm going to move this board up here so you can see it. And I stack them on edge, and then sometimes I'll stack them so they have a little air apart between them, and they'll dry a little more quickly. So it's a good idea probably to put plastic down first and then put your bands on top. I think I may end up just kind of putting another plastic covered bat on, and I'll flip it over like a sandwich so that I can transfer it, because I forgot to do that. So I like to use the edge of this level because I know it's 2 inches wide, and I can cut nice strips from it really easily. So I just use my needle tool and I cut right through. So it's really important if you're using the slab roller that you make note of how many boards you're taking out to work with, because you need to keep your bands the same thickness, ideally. You don't want to have lots of different thicknesses. So I am gonna just keep stacking them up, and sometimes I'll make several boards if I'm gonna make more than one piece, and then I just cut on the edges. We have yardsticks that are pretty wide, so you can use those as a form to cut around, and it makes them nice and even. You can also extrude your bands. I'm going to show you how to use the extruder in the studio, and it works really nicely for extruding shapes for band building. We have a kind of a strip, and we have a coil shape. So I extruded my coils earlier. I have an extruder here at home that I used, but I'm also going to show you tomorrow how to extrude them with the North Star extruder that we have at Stamps. And I'll demonstrate how you do that in another video. So I'm just gonna keep working up, and I'm gonna get all my bands ready so that when I start to construct, I'm not having to wait on my bands being stiff enough to construct with. I just have to wait until the clay that I add to my pot stiffens up a bit. And the construction goes a lot more quickly if you're ready to go with all of your bands ready, but you want to be really careful not to let them dry out, but to keep them just the right moisture content. So if you had a little stiff clay from your throwing that I said, oh, don't use that, it's too stiff, this would be the right time to use that stiff clay. It works much better for band building or slab building. You may also want to construct something out of slab forms, and I'll show you how to do that too. So once I see what your proposals are, then I can give you some advice on how you might go about constructing. So even though these are not very straight on the edges, I can kind of join them together or overlap the edges as I build up, and I should be fine. I don't have to get rid of all that clay. I can still use it. So I'm just going to take all these pieces that are left over and wedge them up, all right, so that they stay nice and soft. And then I can roll another slab. So I'll probably need some more bands because I think I'm going to build a piece that's a lot larger than that, than the ones I've been building. So maybe I'm going to shoot for 30 inches. So I have a piece over here that I've made on a slab, and I'll wheel it over. It's big, so I put it on a dolly here. And I have a metal mold that I put a sheet on. I'll bring it back here so you can see it, so that I could have a resist between the metal bowl and the clay so it won't stick. And I'm just going to let it sit on here for a few hours and get it to stiffen up, and then I can flip it over and put it on a bat so that I can begin to work. But I'm going to bring this one into the studio and show you, or start another one, not sure yet, how to build a little bit bigger. So you want to get yourself all ready and think about what you want your base to be like. So I'll show you some images in the page that I post with this video of some of my pieces. So I like them to have kind of a roundish bottom, and so I typically will start on a round form like that, or on kind of a bowl shape like this. But I have them in different sizes, and you can see these are some smaller pieces here in the back that I've been working on. This is a terrible video, sorry. But so I've got these kind of little shapes that I'm making into lamps. So I'm gonna make a larger scale form like that. Okay, see ya.